The Birth of Optima, Greenshore, by David Hammond. Chapter 5, Homecoming, Part 2. Having overcome the surprise of being presented with the mission, I loudly reply, "Sir, yes sir." Legos points over my left shoulder and says, "That's the spirit, Private Sharpe. Now load those munitions onto the mass and come back for the rest of your supplies." At the rear of the room stands 4 large munition crates, which are stacked on top of each other. On top of the crate lays 3 large green holdalls, which all look to be jam-packed with munitions. Those 2 holdalls on the left are for Hirsch van Winkle, the resistance leader, said Legos, pointing to the holdalls on the left. The other holdall to the far right is yours. Once you reach the stronghold, give both holdalls to Hirsch. The general starts collecting the shells from the desk by scooping them into a large green bucket. "Oh, and that reminds me. Tell him I want all empty magazines returned with the holdalls, and obviously yourself in one piece. As for Frank, well, I hope he gets shot. No." Before Legos can finish his sentence, the door opens. "Sorry, General, I do apologise," said Taylor, popping his head in the room. "What's wrong with knocking before you enter?" said Legos, while shaking his head at Taylor. "Watch them at the resistance, Sharpe. They have sticky fingers. You'll want to make sure you keep your holder on you at all times. Do you hear me?" I nod Legos a wink and continue over to the holdalls, while Legos himself makes his way over to the door to speak to Taylor. Both Legos and Taylor now begin to converse, whilst I reach down to the zipper of my holdall. Damn, my hands are sweaty. Pulling the zipper ring, I gently open the bag to expose its goods. 1 black polished M5 greaser lays peacefully on its side, within its cushioned case. Just above the gun sits its 5-inch silencer attachment. To the right of the case is the M5's magazine clips that are rolled up in an ammo belt. Separated from the M5, in its very own cushioned home, is a red dot laser sight attachment. I've got to say, this is by far the best setup for close quarter warfare. General Legos sure knows his stuff when it comes to weaponry. I zip the holdall back up and throw it over my shoulder while picking up each of the munition holdalls. I then attempt to squeeze past Legos, who stands holding the door open for me as I exit the room. "Careful, Sharpe. There's incendiary grenades in one of those holdalls. Take them to the mass immediately and return for your rations and medic's kit. Pronto. You'll be leaving very shortly." "Sir, yes sir," I replied. Catching Taylor's eyes as I pass him, I quietly say, "No more tea duties for me. I'm off, mate." "Can't I help Sharpe with the gear, General?" said Taylor in a helpful but stammering tone. Give the man a hand and report back to me, ASAP. You've also got special objectives in that folder. It's about some targets further up the circular park towards the north side," said Legos, pointing to the counter. I throw my eyes to where the recently delivered hump report sits and say, "Alpha 20 was using their hump device when I was on shift, sir, and it looked as if they were receiving more intel." "Fud it, that's my chances of having a quiet night over then," replied Legos. "Taylor, I want you geared up so I can get some rest. I've got a pornographic novel that I've started reading, so hurry the fud up." Legos lowers his tone while looking around the hallway, and just like a pervert whispers, "It's called 30 Shades of Blonde. It's pure filth and right up my street." He now abruptly stops with his sleazy talk and shouts, "Well, don't just stand there, men. Get out of here." Releasing my grip from the handle, I transfer one heavy munition holder to Taylor, who immediately throws it over his back. Climbing the stairs and out onto the passage, we then emerge from the bunker. The air within the bunker is stagnantly warm, with a strong twang of gunpowder. Therefore, the transition of fresh air outside is greatly revitalising. Turning right, we struggle over to the Mark II mass and load the holdalls inside its rear storage box. Casually walking back to the bunker, I then turn to Taylor and say, "Thanks, pal. Much appreciated, man. They were heavy as fud." "It's cool, man. Any time, brother. Listen up. I overheard some of the conversation that you had with Legos just before I rudely entered the room. I'll make sure I keep a close eye on you when you head off out. As for that Frank fella, he can go and fud himself." "Cheers, pal. Can you do me a favour?" "What's that, Sharpe?" "When you see Scott, let him know I've gone to the red zone, stronghold. I don't want to disturb him, as he's probably sleeping. Oh, and another thing. Keep an eye out for Louis and Isabella," I said as we both shake hands. "Don't worry, I'll let Scott know. Just make sure you stay safe, pal. It's fucking dangerous out there. That reminds me, make sure you watch out for that Frank fella." "Why?" "I don't know. He's just a weird grunt. And a thief," said Taylor, looking over his shoulder. "Honestly, mate, be cautious." I can sense a deep feeling of compassion from Taylor towards me as he continues his tight grip. His perception of Frank is spot on too. Goes to show what sort of grunt Frank is. I mean, how can you be hated by almost everybody? Taylor lets go from his gripping handshake and continues back down to the bunker, throwing me the thumb up as he disappears downstairs. We had become like brothers in the pits, all three of us, and deep down I know Taylor and Scott have both got my back. It sure is comforting to know that Taylor will be on the Z6 when I head out. Having entered the bunker, I proceed to the sleeping quarters, while Taylor returns to Legos for his new objectives. I enter the sleeping quarters and scan my vision to the right. To the right side of the room is a built-in bunk bed, with the snoring personnel sleeping peacefully. Directly in front of me and adjacent to the bunk bed is a large poster of a topless woman, which hangs like a shrine just under a dull illuminated light source. To the left of the room is another bunk bed that Scott is now sleeping in. The steel walls of the room have roughly taped pictures, along with scattered creased letters from loved ones that also hang from the walls. The loud snores of the personnel sleeping, along with the ammunition trailer generator above the bunker, makes an annoying, unpleasant rhythm that almost causes my ears to bleed. Swiftly grabbing my rucksack and trench coat, I silently leave the room, while gently clicking the door handle. Having stuffed my trench coat into my bag, I then throw my rucksack across my back and travel down the stairs towards the medic's room. That's located last room on the left. I swiftly pass the closed door of the armoury and pull the thick plastic sheet across to enter the brightly lit medic station. It's the only room in the whole darn bunker without those dull looking steel panels. The rear of the room has 2 foldable beds, along with an analysis observation machine. Adjacent to the beds is a defibrillator machine that's bolted waist height to the white tiled wall. To the far left corner of the room stands a large unit containing medical supplies. I move towards the unit and reach up to the medical case that sat on the top shelf. Removing the straps of my rucksack, I open it up and pluck a med kit from its home. I then place the sealed kit within my bag while swiftly exiting the room. Making my way to the room opposite, I twist the brass doorknob and hit the light switch. It's cold as fud in here. The room has those dreary, steel-panelled walls that are slightly hidden by built-in 5-tiered shelves. I can now hear a slight buzzing noise coming from the cooling system of the room. The cold air in the room makes my hair stand to attention as I swiftly proceed to the table that's situated at the right side of the room. The table has a notebook and pen sat on top of it, along with a designated food parcel for myself. Having stuffed a week's worth of rations into my bag, I now aim to the exit and switch off the lights. I begin making tracks down the passageway while rearranging my rucksack. Looking up to my right, I can now see General Legos trying desperately to lock up the armoury. The locking of the armoury is also a common practice, especially with thieving bastards like Frank the Wank. Frank obtained his nickname because he is a no-good thieving wanker. Robbie Garnett had caught Frank rummaging through his personal belongings 1 week before we had arrived. When Rob confronted Frank, he apparently went off in a violent outburst that left Robbie with 2 black eyes. Both Legos and Barrick were informed by Rob, who was beaten up quite badly. Frank was then ordered to camp outside for the remainder of his service by Legos, who was absolutely livid. I've had no run-ins with Frank myself. However, I'd happily go along with Rob and the others, as they know him better than us newbies. According to Duncan Maloney, the uncle of Francis Maloney, it is a well-known fact that Frank and Barrick are related. I'm not sure how, but somewhere down the line they are. I believe Frank was married into Barrick's side of the family, or vice versa. Duncan also told me that when he was on the Z6 shift, tempers had flared between both generals shortly after Rob got his face punched in. Duncan said that Frank was almost inches away from being totally removed from the Alpha 15 base. Well, that was until Barrick stepped in. It's a strange one, really. I mean, Barrick seems like a cool guy. But hey, as they say, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. Damn this bloody lock and treacherous key. Well, don't just stand there daydreaming, Sharpe. Here, you have a go. Unclipping the large bunch of keys from his belt, Legos then passes them to me. I grab the bunch of keys from Legos and gently insert the selected key into the slot. I then wriggle it until I feel the end of the key catch on to the locking mechanism. With a gentle turn to the left, it then catches the mechanism and successfully locks the door. Well done, man. Bravo. There's a knack to that lock, but ever since I've been reading that pornographic novel, it appears to have left me with a sore wrist. Anyway, Frank should be ready now, said Legos, looking over his shoulder, holding his novel tightly against his chest. Good riddance to him, the dirty, thieving bastard. Believe me, Private, if Barrick wasn't such a nice person, I would have booted that piece of crud out a long time ago. I hand the keys back to the General and salute him. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you. I'll be sending all correspondent recon recordings to Alpha 10 in the morning. The findings should then arrive at the stronghold by tomorrow afternoon. Make sure you inform Hirsch of this. Not a problem, General, I said as he crushingly shakes my hand. Sharpe, good luck out there. You'll be okay. You're with Hirsch. Listen up, you'll never know what may come of it in terms of your military career. So make sure you focus in at the task at hand. Now be off with yourself. I head up the stairs lively, and just before I leave decide to fill up my hip flask by using the canteen's fresh water tap. Legos follows behind me while cheerfully whistling into the entertainment room. He's a strange one, that Legos. because when we arrived at the Alpha base, he straight away informed us all of his wealth and boasted that he had owned many properties and luxury Lazarati sports cars within the relatively up-and-coming part of the southern red zone. Unfortunately, all of his prized possessions were destroyed by Zakatarian paratroopers who had used his homes as strategical outposts. He acts and talks as if his possessions still exist, especially his prized sports cars. He really does give off an extreme vibe of being materialistic. However, deep down, he's not a bad guy, and in a way, I do actually feel sorry for all that he has lost. Legos would occasionally check up on myself and Scott on our first week to see how we were getting on with the Z4 project that both himself and Barrick had appointed to us. Scott would comically roll his eyes at me from having seen Legos enter in a tunnel and then drop his head, trying his best not to make eye contact with him. Scott would do this because he was tired of the General's self-absorbed behaviour. I've got to admit, it was quite funny watching Scott, especially when he would mimic Legos behind his back. I've been meaning to ask you, Sharpe, have you by any chance stumbled across Zuntra in its struggle? Asked Legos, while leaning himself around the doorway of the entertainment room. I remember you telling me that you watched it. However, I can't find it anywhere. That's strange. I did indeed watch it, but I made sure that I put it back where I found it, I replied, screwing the lid onto my hip flask. Honestly, General, I'm not that way inclined to take other people's property. Don't be silly, Private. I know you wouldn't have taken it, said Legos, looking up to the exit of the bunker. That piece of crud outside has probably helped himself to it. Frank knows that he can sell it for a fistful of creds. I know for a fact that Barrick has been letting him into the bunker, behind my back. Listen up. I'm sorry for keeping you. Right, General, I replied, aiming for the exit. If we don't hang together, we will most certainly hang apart by our necks, yelled Legos in a patriotic tone. Right on, General, right on. Climbing the stairs and out onto the base, I continued to the mass. The mass that I'll be taking to the stronghold is located near to the Z6 ammunition trailer. To the front of the ammo trailer is the generator that powers the ammo rails to each Z6 turret. The sound from the generator makes an annoying, consistent low-pitched noise that slightly echoes down to the expansiveness of the terrain. Boy, am I glad to see and hear the last of that generator. Second generation Mass Mark IIs are as strong as an ox, and their 5-litre twin-turbo diesel engines can reach speeds of up to 70 miles per hour, which I think is about 112 kilometres an hour. Walking around the mass, I check the tyres' air pressures by giving each tyre a good old kick. The truck's wheels are reinforced and capable of withstanding anything from sharp projectiles to relatively small explosions. Making my way around to the front of the truck, and I begin to examine the exterior of its cab. Its large, bulky cab is a massive improvement compared to the Mark I, as its shell is completely sealed. The sand-coloured paint job of the Mark II Mass blends perfectly into the scorched terrain of the circular park, which makes it look extremely furtive. The cabin shell is reinforced with an altogether different type of material that I am now running my fingers over. Its surface is both cold and rough and feels as tough as fud. At the side of the cab is a built-in ladder The ladder itself leads to the rooftop mounted hatch, which has an automatic machine gun bolted down to its rim. Both of the truck's windscreens are made from reinforced glass with shielded steel flaps for added protection. Its armoured front shell has purposely built slotted machine gun turrets that both hang out about a foot long, perfect for those frontal assaults. To the rear of the vehicle is a pickup style storage unit that has 2 heavy machine guns bolted down either side. Whoever designed this sure knows his or her stuff. Damn, it's a brute of a machine, I said as I walk around to the rear of the vehicle. The Zakas would have a hard time getting through this baby. She's a fine machine, yelled General Barrick, whose surprise appearance startles me. General, I replied, you made me jump out of my bloody skin. General Barrick laughs from having made me jolt, and then goes on to say, thought I'd pop up and see the pair of you off before you both head out. I wish you both the safest of journeys across the park. Listen, Sharpe, my nephew Frank can sometimes be a pain in the arse. However, deep down, he's a good kid. Frank's your nephew? That's right, Private, he is indeed. So why are you letting him go into the red zone, General? Isn't it safer for him to remain here, behind the safety of the sandbag wall? He is a stubborn fool at times, Private. Frank truly believes that he is immortal and has decided to take it upon himself to go against his aunt's wishes and join the resistance, said the General in deep thought. I haven't got the authority to stop him, as he is a fully grown man, capable of making his own silly decisions. Don't worry, General, I'll try my best to watch his back. Sharpe, just watch your own back out there. Besides, I believe Frank is joining up with another team of resistance fighters, replied Barrick. However, if you do get a chance, please try and discourage him from joining. Who knows, maybe he might return to Alpha and save me getting the cold shoulder from my wife. I'll try my best, General. Right, you best be off, said the General. Sorry, General, but could I ask you a question, sir? Go ahead, Private. I've been meaning to ask you, what's your overall perception of the gatekeepers? I curiously asked. I mean, what's your stance in terms of their position within the Zakatarian government? And the fact that they display the Zuntra pyramid on their uniform? I would be more interested in your answer, Sharpe, seeing that you've had first-hand experience with them, said Barrick with an intrigued head-on. However, seeing that the question has been aimed at me, I'll tell you my overall theory. I believe they are merely tools for the Zakatarians, especially when you take into consideration the science that went into their internal explosives. As for the pyramid symbol, it's probably just a finishing touch to indicate who owns them. What are you saying then, General? Bio-robotic androids? Replicated, cloned humans, Sharpe, undergoing their very own form of evolution, said Barrick with raised brows. See, these particular creepers, according to Zuntran authorities, appear to have had internal organs, just like those of a human being. Evolving, I asked. What, like upgraded versions? Exactly that, Private, said Barrick. Hence why I believe that they are merely cloned replicants created by Zakataria, and not these far-fetched outlandish theories of them being from planet Zik. I thought they were bio-robotic, However, from what you have just said about them being replicant humans, makes more sense, because they really do share the same qualities as us humans, I replied. I take it you have spoken to Scott then? I have indeed. He's an interesting fellow, Private, said Barrick. Scott honestly believes that the creeps are aliens from the outside of the dome, yet he has absolutely nothing to go on in terms of evidence. I know, General. He baffles me too. He really does, I said while shaking my head. By the way, while we're on the subject, what is your theory in regards to the exterior of the dome, sir? Our existence here is no joke, Private. We are here to be tested. This reality has been created for the purpose of separating good from evil. And your evidence, General? The ancients and the scriptures, Private, said Barrick. It states inside that we must serve our Lord Xenos to earn a place in heaven. And we now know that we are living within something created by intelligent design. The dome, for instance. Is Xenos the pyramid symbol that is on almost everything Zakatarian, including the creepers' uniforms? Correct, it certainly is. You've got to understand, Sharpe, that it is not the symbol that is bad, but more the people who abuse its true meaning, replied Barrick. The true path of Zuntra tells us to devote ourselves to the Lord Xenos by detaching ourselves from all of our earthly distractions. I myself have handed over all of my material wealth in the past to Zuntra temples in Arakia. You travelled to Arakia? Certainly. It was really a pilgrimage in honour of Xenos, not forgetting my dear mother and father. And what did you hand over, General? Large quantities of gold and silver, replied Barrick. Millions upon millions of Zuntra worshippers do the same thing every year. However, due to the ongoing war, it has scaled down a lot. So you believe in Zuntra and Xeno, down to the ancient scriptures of the past? I don't believe Xeno exists. I know Xeno exists, said Barrick in a calm-like manner. Are you not a spiritual person, Sharpe? I begin to think back to when Mum had visited me in the entertainment room. Maybe I should tell him. Then again, he might drag me in to be psychologically evaluated by the medic at base. Depends on my mood, I suppose. Barrick chuckles to himself and says, Anyway, I'd best be off, Private, and so should you. Thanks once again for yet another interesting conversation, General, I said as we both salute and peel ourselves away from each other. Barrick is extraordinarily fascinating, yet to follow a belief system that requires you to part in your hard-earned wealth is extremely worrying, especially knowing that it is affiliated with the Zakas and the Creepers. I really did want to fry him for allowing himself to follow a stupid religion such as Zuntra, and cannot believe he actually travelled all the way to Arakia just to hand over his valuables to some strange high priest located in some bombed out Arakian temple. Oh well, as the saying goes, a fool and his gold are soon parted. I now proceed towards Frank the Wank, who is crouched down near to the right side of the neighbouring mass that's located on the other side of the ammunition trailer. I approach him as he adjusts his bike and notice his signature all-in-one black tactical armoured suit while wearing a half-face military-style helmet. The lower part of his face is withdrawn like a drug addict, and his black eyes are sunken deep inside his skull. Budding spark plug, screamed Frank, kneeling down at the side of his motorcycle. What the fud are you staring at? Frank militantly stands up after his abrupt welcome, and in an agitated manner dawns on his leather gloves. Nothing. Just checking to see if you're ready, that's all, I cautiously replied. I try my best not to get drawn into an argument from his unwelcoming attitude, and can now clearly see why the guy is totally disliked. His whole aura is absolutely disgusting. Disgusting to the point that I can feel his negative energy smothering my soul. Well, go on then, get going, yelled Frank as he begins to kickstart his motorcycle. He now exposes his rather large neck tattoo as he kicks the crud out of his kickstart. This gives me just enough time to check it out. The tattoo appears to be of a snake wrapped around a dagger. Such a fitting tattoo for a sly snake of a man. The two-stroke engine of his bike now kicks in and makes a unique rattling sound as he blasts its throttle and adjusts its choke. Without hesitation, I immediately walk back towards the mass to the sound of the heavily revved bike. Hold up a minute. I'll ride up your near side, just in case they try and shoot at me. Throwing my thumb up in the air, I shout no problem. I head back to the truck lively and place my palms on the cold steel ladder of the mass and prepare to ascend it. Suddenly, Louis brushes his clean coat up against my mucky boots, purring at me as I'm about to climb. Go back, Louis. Go to Isabella now, I said as he rolls around the rough terrain, begging for a belly rub. Ah, darn it. Louis, you certainly do pick your moments, I said as I kneeled down to give him a scratch. Now stroking his pink wet nose, I repeat my orders again by gesturing with a stern point of my finger to go back to his makeshift home, to which he reluctantly follows. He now sits near to his den, casually cleaning his paws, while Isabella rolls onto her back, stretching. Clever little fella. He is obviously saying his farewells. I do hope he doesn't follow me, I said as I placed my hands back onto the truck's ladder. I now start climbing the ladder and reach the top of its roof. Twisting the handle, I lift the heavy hatch. Taking off my rucksack down to the tight entrance, I drop it into the cab and then climb down into its interior, while simultaneously locking the hatch behind myself. Saddling up in the central driver's seat, I strap my body in with the thick harness straps and then turn on the ignition switch. The interior automatically lights up with one turn of the key, along with its brightly lit gauges that illuminate the cab. Vroom vroom! A subtle vibration rattles the cab as the diesel engine kicks in, along with the whistling sound of its turbos. Leaning down just under the steering wheel, I activate the front spot lamps that are connected to the front bull bar. I'm already getting both nervous and sweaty as I scan the terrain outside. The light emitting from both spot lamps expose the rough surface superbly, to the extent that I can now see about 20 metres ahead of myself. Using my left hand, I push the gear stick into first gear and release the handbrake. With a slight poke of acceleration, I slowly release the clutch and begin to roll off over the small bridge that sat on top of the Z6 ammo belt. Pulling the steering to the right, I then cruise the clutch. Frank the Wank now begins to ride up against my left side as we pass the left side Z6 turret that I believe Taylor is now operating. Heading 10 o'clock towards Alpha 10, I now slip the gear stick into second and third. The whistle from the truck's twin turbos makes a unique sound as I press on. Still stuck to my left side while cruising over the bumpy terrain is Frank the Wank, carefully dodging shrapnel and craters. We successfully make it to the rear of Alpha 10. The suspension of the seat I'm sat upon rocks around like an old boat as my truck climbs the rough terrain behind the Alpha 10 base. I'll press on in fourth gear with Frank who cautiously leans his bike around the piles of scattered debris. The suburbs start falling into sight from the red-dimmed reflection of the driver's window that has been created by the reflection of the illuminated control panels inside. Fud me, look at the state of this place. The borderline of the red zone now starts to get very unnerving as we approach. The constant clanging of mechanical parts and vibrational rattles violently shakes the truck to the point that I fart in fear. A large beam of light now emits from our destination. The extent of the bombing, along with the surprise attacks, have made my once home an unpleasant place. Having made it to the edge of the red zone, we are immediately signalled by a team of traffic marshals, who signal to us with illuminated traffic batons. They wave the baton lights as if we are coming in to land a bloody plane, and direct us to an opening on our left. Crud, that's a bit extreme, I said as I observed the painted black face of the marshal. Spot lamps and watchtowers surround the stronghold and expand themselves around the whole circumference of the base. The spot lamps act as a perfect source of artificial light for the base and force me to throw down the sun visor to protect my eyes from the sharp glare of the powerful bulbs. Two very large mesh gates are now forced open by the two personnel, who slide them across its metal running rails, while waving us through with their batons. Overpowering noise of military choppers flying over my cabin literally rattles my cockpit and instantly kills the sound of my truck's engine. Wow, the size of this place is extraordinary. Grizzly tanks line up on the right side in their hundreds. I gulp as I now pass the front of the intimidating tanks. The bloody size of them, fud me. Now that's what you call a tank. The tanks make my second generation mass look like a dinky toy as I drive up beside the long line of battle-hardened warriors. They look awesome. Awesome to the point that I now want to become a tank driver. The tank regiment's personnel sit and rest on top of the giant tanks while smoking and joyfully conversing with each other. We are now both signalled to drive towards a new large towering Star 12 anti-aircraft gun by a young spotty-faced trooper who appears to be just out of high school. The height of the weapon is spectacular, as both myself and Frank bend our necks to view its very peak. Its intimidating warhead points towards the artificial stars of the dome. The warhead itself is red in colour, with various mechanised instruments attached to the platform that the large rocket sits above. I now throw my eyes over to the spotty trooper, who chuffs away at his cigarette while signalling towards a building. It appears that the building is a barracks, because I can see hundreds of military personnel committing to military drills outside. I now crawl at walking pace around the side of the building and head towards 4 heavily fortified buildings that are now falling into view. A large squadron of possibly 200 infantry troopers now jog in front of the queuing vehicles that have now slowed down in front of me. The jogging troops loudly chant Zuntra military songs in sync, creating an enormous sense of comfort. I observe the distant fortified buildings and notice that there is an endless supply of rotating Z4 turrets that are sat strategically positioned around the structure's rooftop. The operators slowly swivel them from left to right, scanning the bomb terrain that surrounds the outside of the intimidating base. The youngster who has led us the whole time now signals to us to both park up amongst a long line of rugged quad bikes. He then finally points over towards the barracks, motioning for myself and Frank to enter. Gathering my personal belongings, I prepared to disembark the truck's hatch. "Home sweet home," I said as I popped my head out the hatch to scan the base. "Let's get down to business." To be continued.